you tell this rumex from others, aside from the seed pod, it has sheep's ear. So it's called sheep sorrel because it looks like a little sheep head.
Oh, look at that.
So that's one of the ways
Or
that
a
you
little
tell
fish.
it. And if you've not nibbled on it, this tasting it is one of your IDs. It's that sour. It tastes like a little sour grass. See the little ears on it? Yeah, so that's what you're looking for with the sheep sorrel. If you think you have sheep sorrel and it doesn't have ears, it's not sheep sorrel. You know, it can grow up like this tall, and it has either white or yellow flowers, and it's pretty much ignored. You could eat it. It's not the tastiest plant. It's called sweet milliot, M-E-L-L-I-O-T, sweet milliot, or sweet white clover, or sweet yellow clover. So I know those of you in the back, because you can't see it back there. It's very common, so I'm gonna go ahead and pick a leaf for you to see. The milliot, the sweet white clover. So it's, you know, again, it's belongs to the lucerne family or the clover family, and it's super common, and it's an incredible medicine. I think it's also, you can use it, you could call this like a survival food. It's not one we usually eat.
And what's it called again? Sweet milliot?
Sweet milliot or sweet white clover. Actually, it's nice. You just stew that up. I usually just use it in medicine, but it's an incredible medicine for the whole respiratory system and the immune system. Oh, there's the bitterness. I have to point it out to you because it's a really excellent medicine, and it grows so prolifically, and as I said, it's mostly ignored.
So you said it's for respiratory or immune, so when would you suggest to use that?
Yes.
I mean, because respiratory and immune is big.
Yeah, they're big. So one of the things, I'm giving you just little tidbits of all these plants. I could take any one of these plants and probably talk 20 minutes about each of them, and I'm trying not to do that.
I would sit here.
Yeah. So there's lots of information, but that's a very good question. When would you use this? This, for coughs and stuff, it would be used for cold. So you would take it as a cold remedy, or any time you have respiratory issues. It's not generally used as a tonic that's used to prevent respiratory issues. So you would,
okay.
Yeah. And then, what was that other question?
Immune.
Oh yeah, when would you use it as immune? Yeah, so usually for immune support, it would be, you know, everybody around you is getting sick, or your body feels a little down and you have to go to a big party and you don't want to get sick. So you use it to support the immune system.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not used for long-term immune health. It's used for supporting the immune system. And then the other really important plant that I would strongly recommend that you all know is our mullein.
Yay, mullein!
Yeah, I know. So that's what this is. So when you're driving here and driving home, you see fields of this. So this is your indication of there was a field of mullein here. What I've learned is where I see these, so as a wildcrafter, you know, I'm always looking to see, can I go back and harvest this the next year? So I would see these fields of mullein, but if I go back the next year, there's no mullein there. I have to wait 2 full cycles. So mullein is a biennial, both when it comes up and also when it goes down. You generally will not find another field of mullein the following year. You might find a few stray ones, but you're not going to find a huge field. This is an incredible plant. Again, if we were looking top 10 plants, this would be one of the plants you'd want to know. It is a weedy plant for certain. Honey, would you hold that little bouquet for me? Thank you. What's your name? Neve. Okay, thank you. This is precious. You hold on to those. All right, so this, for many of you, this is a weedy plant, right? But for herbalists, and it's really one of the more valuable plants. And so there's no counterindications, which means that we don't have warnings about it. You don't have to worry about using, you know, counterindications if you use it with medicine or whatever.
Drug interactions.
No interactions, that's right. And the whole plant is used, so we use the leaves the first year. So this little rosette, which you may not see down here, is a first year mullein that's just growing. These are used for any kind of cough and respiratory issues. These can be used as preventatives. So if you have long-term respiratory issues, if you have asthma and allergies and you get a lot of congestion, these can be used as a tonic long-term, and they also are really excellent for acute situations as well. So we use them both as a preventative and as medicine, right? They're also really excellent if you're a backpacker. It's the nicest, softest, compostable toilet paper you can get. Though I do want to do a little warning. I've told that to people for years, and there are people, those little hairs can be very sensitive on their buns. So there are people who get like a rash from using it. I just feel like I should pass that on.
So it's not a baby wipe.
Yeah, I wouldn't baby wipe it. I mean, if that's all you have, do it. It's also an incredible poultice herb. So again, antimicrobial, antibacterial, does the same thing in our lungs. So I wouldn't call it a food necessarily. I mean, you could eat this. It's not toxic, but I consider it more of an herbal medicine. This is a good question. What's the best way to dry mullein? So again, I'm just going to throw this little bit of information. So mullein has both moisture and it's both moisturizing and dry. So chemically in this plant, it has moisture and drying. So that's one of the reasons it's so good for the lungs. So it's astringent and moisturizing, both. And you taste it when you eat it. If you took a nibble on this, it's soothing and drying at the same time. And that's really, again, one of the reasons. It helps to dry excess mucus, it helps to dry out bacteria, and it also soothes inflamed tissue, right? But when you come to dry a plant like this, or comfrey, it's very full of moisture. So you might want to just, it's a little harder, not hard to dry, but requires a little bit more. And if you have a little food dehydrator, it works really great. Or screens, you can put like a nice cheesecloth across the screens, or drying baskets. It's a whole nother topic.
This is pretty tasty.
The temperature when drying.
You can chew it.
Yeah.
Okay.
But you'll taste you can definitely taste it, but you'll see what I'm talking about. It's very dry, and then it's also mucilaginous.
Mandy has a story.
Oh, please, Mandy.
A friend of mine, she said that she had gone online and looked at the different, and she said she knew you could use it for heat it up in teas, but you could also do a cold version. And so she put it in water in the fridge, and she put that in her humidifier, and it got her through a really bad case of COVID. And she said every time she coughed, it tasted like a mullet. Because it was in her lungs,
I know. I really want to encourage any of you who have not been using plants for medicinal purposes, and then just for foraging, to really get into it. It's just it's part of our ancestry as human beings, honestly. All of it doesn't matter what culture you come from, absolutely doesn't matter. You have that in your bloodline. I always say it's, loving plants and being loved back by the plants is one of the things we share as humanity. With all of our discussions and disagreements going on right now, plants are one thing that brings us together. This is flowering. It puts out small flowers up the stalk. It never flowers all at once. You get small flowers that come up, and those flowers are one of the most powerful anodynes that we have as herbalists. An anodyne means it really helps with pain. It helps relieve pain. And it's especially an old-fashioned remedy that I want to say works incredibly for ear infections this is very important, for ear infections that are due to congestion. So like you have an ear infection because you have a cold, you have excess mucus in your body. It is not ever good to put oil in your ear if you have swimmer's ear, water in your ear. It will just make it worse. And also, if you suspect that the ear is perforated, you have a really bad ear infection that is going to possibly be damaging, I would not put oil in it. But so for the child who wakes up at night and they have an ear infection, they're so soothing. I'm really literally few drops warm oil in the ear, like mother's milk warm, dropped in the ear, mullein flower oil, is unbelievable. It's like a famous remedy for it. It's just, so it not only helps with the pain, it also is a natural antiseptic, a natural antibacterial agent, so it's fighting the infection. I have friends who make gallons and gallons of mullein flower oil and just sell it all across the country because it's quite a popular remedy. You can use it topically, as an anodyne, but mostly it's that really famous for ear infections. And just for those of you who get into this, mullein flower is often mixed with St. John's wort oil and oftentimes mixed with garlic oil. So all of those are remedies that are used together, but even just the mullein flower by itself.
Now, what's the shelf life? Excuse me.
Yeah, so oil does not...
just like I say shelf life, but I mean in the ground after the
Oh.
second year.
After the second year,
Yeah.
then it dies.
Unharvested.
Unharvested. After the second year, it dies back.
It'll go to seed though, and it'll come
yeah,
back
more
a
will
couple
come
years.
up.
In a
Okay.
couple years.
Oh,
It
yeah,
doesn't-
after
usually
a
not
couple-
the first
But
year.
Yeah.
after that, it can't be harvested.
So,
Doesn't hurt.
yeah, so, oh yeah, no, you only, so when this plant is in flower, you pick those, what you do is you have just a small little jar and you have your olive oil in there and you go out every few days and you pick your oil, your flowers, and you put them in that oil, and you always keep the flowers covered by about 1 inch of oil. If the flowers poke up, they're gonna grow mold. So you always keep them covered. You can put a little weight in there, like a fermenting weight, to keep them down. And then once you have that oil, it takes about, you let the herbs steep in the oil for a couple weeks. And then once you have the oil does not have a long shelf life. So you have to either keep it in your cold storage or in your refrigerator. Then it lasts for, a year or so.
How about coconut oil? That seems
Yeah, you can use coconut oil, absolutely. The thing with coconut oil is you always have to warm it because otherwise it solidifies. Yeah,
And that's a process I like.
yeah, that's good.
Gives you a little bit longer.
And
shelf life.
coconut oil does give you a long shelf. So does olive oil. Olive oil does too. Either is good. The other thing about this herb is that this used to be called torch plant because before they had modern torches, they would take them, not at this stage. This is last year's. It's dead, really. But they would dip it in tallow and bear grease or fat or whatever they had, and then they would light these. They're kind of a smoky torch. They're not going to give you a great big flashlight light, but this is what they used for their torches. So you see it often called torch plant. I love this plant, by the way. First of all, I think it's stunning. I think it's so beautiful in the garden. And you can also buy what's called Greek. So this is our native mullein. Native mullein also colonizes the bad soil. So you see it taking over in really bad soil. It will grow really profusely and it helps to rehabilitate the soil. So these plants are acting as healers for the earth, just like they're acting as healers for us. So this plant actually, if you just let it grow in bad soil, it will help to rehabilitate that soil. You see it along railroad tracks, you see, just really terrible soil it will grow in, and then it eventually, can't do it on a railroad track, but eventually it rehabilitates the soil. So mullein, yeah, lots to say about this amazing plant. Lots of stories and legends, and yeah, I just love it.
You use when you buy mullein, I bought mullein to make into tea. Is it that right there?
No, it's the leaf. Oh, it's this right here. So the leaf is the part, let me put that down. The leaf is the part that is used for the respiratory and poultices, and both as a tonic long term and also short term. And the flowers are used for infection as an anodyne. And then the root is also used, the root medicine is used, but I don't use it, so I can't really tell you what it's used for. If I was still studying and I would research and read about it, but you just use what you use, and I want to share with you what I know. So, but I do know the root is used, and there's some other really important thing that was flapping around in my brain that I wanted to tell you about mullein, but it's gone now. No, that's all right. It wasn't yours. So yeah, so this is the year, and so here's another thing to share with you. So the second year, the energy is all going up to this big stalk, right? It's a lot of energy to grow this and all these flowers. And so the leaves, you can still use the leaves the second year, but they're better to harvest. And if you're a wildcrafter or making medicine, you want to really try to gather it in the first year when the leaves are really still strong. Yeah.
So first year better than second.
Absolutely. Really, honestly,
I thought it was the other way around.
no, first year, like these might be a little, and I would never harvest here unless this is all I had. You look for a nice, robust plant, and the leaves are really great. The second year, that stalk starts up. In the spring, the leaves are going to look good, but by summer and fall, the leaves are all worn out.
Yeah.
Too many children, too many seeds. By the way, the other thing that I love about these is that these have thousands and millions of seeds. Well, you see, it's very opportunistic, we say. But these are incredible for the birds. And so you always want to leave stalks up, because all through the winter time, like I live in a really snowy area, like a lot of you, and we leave these, I had to take a long time to convince my very neat husband to leave these stalks up in the garden. And but the birds all winter long, they're clinging to these seeds.
That's good to know.
What I did want to point out is if you look down around your feet, you see the daisies, right? So I want you to take a little, these are the daisies. And I want you to take a little bit of the leaves and just nibble on those daisy leaves. They're so delicious. Here, this is a good edible. Daisy leaves. Yep, just the flowers. You can nibble on the flowers too.
Does it matter which type of daisy?
Most daisies are edible. I mean, I haven't eaten all of them, but you know, if you have a wild daisy, that leaf is very delicious. I wanted to share this. This is not a good example, but this is one of my absolutely favorite delicious wild weeds. It grows in your garden. If you garden, you will always have lamb's quarter growing there. Always. It grows much bigger than this. This is the only little sample I found, which is why I'm pointing it out to you. So it grows much bigger than this, and it takes over a garden, right, Betty? Lamb's quarter. It's a chenopodium, or also called goosefoot. Supposedly that looks like a goosefoot. Some people call it pigweed. Pigweed is a very common name for weeds that grew a lot around you, and you picked them up and fed them to your chickens and pigs. I say pick them up and put them in your house and feed them to yourself. This is just a really delicious plant, and it tastes as good as anything that you grow in the garden. It equals spinach, chard, kale, and it has far higher nutritional values, and you don't have to be, gather all the weeds, take them away. This is the weed. This is the plant. You don't have to give it any special care. So you do have to weed it in your garden because it has thousands of little seeds. But when you're weeding it, put some in the compost and put some in your kitchen. You can eat this. So I'll pass it around. You can take a little taste. As I said, I want to take one little leaf to show you something.
It's actually a really amazing weed. It's got a lot of properties.
See, he agrees with me. All right.
Tastes like chicken.
Tastes like chicken.
Yeah. So normally when
I got more chicken jokes.
When lamb's quarter gets bigger, it gets a little bigger, one of the ways that you tell it is that it has a silvery powdery dust on the underside of the leaf, and it feels granulated. You can actually, all of you have this weed, you know it in your garden. So I just want you to eat it. Like once it goes into seed, it gets a little tough, but you can still eat it. But if you pick it before it goes to seed, I just steam it. We were talking about my grandmother earlier. Oh,
it says that here the little black seeds are similar to quinoa.
And quinoa, yeah, the little black seeds, and that's that book. So to collect those little black seeds, you would use a huge amount of calories to get anything from them. But yes, you can eat those little black seeds.
So I collected the little black seeds. It gets to be about that tall because there were hundreds of plants that went to seed. I didn't eat. And I used them for microgreens all winter.
Oh, perfect.
And then I didn't have to pay a dime for
Did you hear this?
What do you do?
That is the best idea.
It is guaranteed that if you put those out for microgreens, the germination is under 10%. My seeds is like, 98.
I love that. That's a great tip. Thank you so much for sharing that. Did you all hear what she was saying? Yeah, that's beautiful. Phenomenal. Yeah, so you have the greens, you have the seeds that taste like quinoa and sprout like 100%, 110%, and then you have this incredible plant that is always going to show up, always going to be growing. Now, for survival food, it's not really the best because it's always going to be growing where there's disturbance. So really, on this property, this is our disturbed soil, and that's where we found it, and just a little bit. When you find it, can grow this tall. I'm always excited when I find it in the garden. I just know. But I wanted to just mention this too. Our grandmother, Mary, who really survived the genocide, both she and my grandfather came to this country with just a very few members of their family who survived that. And they were, I would say, not survivalists, they were Thrivalist. They did really well. But this was one of the plants when I first started teaching herbalism. I was in my early 20s, and I would take my grandmother Mary to my classes with me, and she would make her horta stew, which was all the wild plants. So lamb's quarter and amaranth and purslane were the wild weeds that she would cook up as a stew and then flavor it with the wonderful Armenian seasoning. And all my students were so impressed. That's how I got to be a good herbalist, like entice them with good food. But raspberry, as you know, may not know this, but it's very high in a chemical constituent called fabrine. and it's really an excellent tonic for the reproductive system. And it's been a long-term tonic remedy for women who are pregnant or who want to get pregnant. So raspberry leaf is probably, it was known in Europe and in the United States as a wonderful tonic. It's just rich in lots of vitamins and minerals. You can taste the leaves. This raspberry doesn't have as many. When this gets older, it's going to have prickles on it. But when it's young like this, the prickles, you can taste the astringent properties in it. So what does astringent do in your mouth? It dries it like cotton. But blackberry, so we have blackberry over there, and blackberry was really the one I wanted to tell you about because so many people don't know about blackberry. So it is the #1 remedy that I know of, really, of everything that I know of for dysentery and diarrhea. It's just, yeah, it's an old native remedy actually that comes from the coastal native tribes here. And I always laugh because it's so effective, but you don't find it for sale often in stores. But have any of you ever tried to dig a blackberry root? It is impossible. You know, you have to really be vigorous to get those roots out. So you don't need a lot, but really if you're ever traveling in the world or, you know, if you have a lot of gastrodigestive upsets. I know with our mom, when our mother, when she was quite elderly, she had rectal cancer and she went through radiation treatment, and she did really well with it actually. She was amazing how well she did. She was in her late 80s and she had to have like 11 weeks of radiation, and 92, she was 92. And her spirits stayed up, but we managed her symptoms with a lot of herbal treatments, and that really helped her. And so one of the things, of course, with radiation, there's also often a lot of bowel issues, and my mother would get diarrhea, and so I just treated the symptoms that she would get with herbs. We treated the problem with the radiation because she would have died much sooner than she did. She lived another, several years, 7 years. She died just a couple years ago, our beloved mom, at 97. Wow. And so, but blackberry root was one of the things I gave her whenever she would start to have bowel issues. So, but also, I've used this myself. I've traveled a lot in the world, always studying herbs wherever I've gone, and like when I'm in places like Southeast Asia or South America and stuff where people get they get problems a lot. And I always would take this for myself in my groups, and it just works like a charm, you know. And again, those are acute situations, so I take small amounts of the remedy frequently. I don't follow what the dosage says, you know, half a teaspoon in the morning, half a teaspoon in the evening, half a teaspoon in the afternoon. I'm going to get diarrhea. It's just not going to work. The only time I really follow those really precise directions is if I'm working with a plant that's toxic, like pokeroot, for instance. Yeah, so if you taste it, so you can taste the astringency in here, but did you taste this a lot? No. Yeah. If you do, it's a little dry, a little cottony, but if you put blackberry leaf in your mouth, it's very astringent. Your mouth gets dry and cottony. So you can use the leaves as well, but it's the root medicine of a blackberry that's really excellent.
To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.